According to the National Weather Service, it reached 92 degrees in the city of Boston, Massachusetts on Thursday, breaking the old record of 91 degrees for the date of May 18th, set over 80 years ago. Records were also set in the cities of Providence, Rhode Island, where it hit 93 degrees, and Hartford, Connecticut, which touched 94 degrees. Meanwhile, Maine's Department of Environmental Protection issued an air quality alert on Thursday, with record temperatures being forecasted for the state.
The U.S. Navy is moving the USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier to the Korean Peninsula. Amid heightened tensions in the region, it will conduct dual carrier training exercises with the USS Carl Vinson. This comes only days after North Korea established a substantial leap forward in their missile program. The country launched a projectile that achieved successful controlled re-entry into the Earth's lower atmosphere instead of falling back. After finishing a maintenance period and sea trials in Japan, the USS Ronald Reagan left for the Korean Peninsula Tuesday. After serving 7 years in a military prison for men despite being a woman, Chelsea Manning is free. She was released Wednesday and opened up an Instagram account soon after. Over the past 24 hours, she has gained about 29,000 followers and counting, and posted pictures of a handful of firsts: steps of freedom, a slice of pizza, a glass of champagne, and her latest look. Yup, Manning posted a portrait of herself, and she looks lovely. Manning's lengthy sentence was commuted by President Obama after she sent him a letter in which she pled for freedom, citing terrible conditions and constant solitary confinement.
Prom season is a wonderful time of year. We also love hearing stories of kids finding special meaning in prom season. And Skylar Berler, a swimmer at Harvard University, just shared a side-by-side photo from 2 different proms with a very poignant message. Berler is a transgender man, and the side-by-side image, taken 3 years apart, shows him before and after his gender transition. He also talks about his own journey with gender and acknowledges that the 2 pictures are an oversimplification of his transition, though they do make a striking statement when accompanied by his caption.
Venezuela's government, led by President Nicolas Maduro, has raised the country's minimum wage 6 times in the last year. However, it also tells its people how much they must pay for basic foodstuffs, an amount that is higher than most wages. Due to rampant hunger across the country, street protests occur frequently and are often met with deadly force. The government restricts the media and has taken CNN en Español off the air. A young anesthesiologist, Dr. Ricardo Rubio, says there is no precedent to the lack of medicine, the lack of medical supplies, the deterioration of the hospitals, the deterioration of the way they treat doctors. Meanwhile, Venezuela's government has repeatedly said its problems are being exaggerated by foreign media.
On Thursday, the United Nations said up to 200,000 more people potentially could flee Mosul as Iraqi forces continue to push into the last district still held by Islamic State militants. Since security forces opened a new front against militants in Mosul earlier this month, authorities and aid agencies are already struggling to cope with surging displacement. Lise Grande, the UN's humanitarian coordinator for Iraq, said in a statement, "The numbers of people who are moving are now so large it's becoming more and more difficult to ensure civilians receive the assistance and protection they need." Since the start of the campaign last October, nearly 700,000 people have fled Mosul, seeking refuge with either friends and relatives or in camps.
2 Indonesian men have been sentenced to public canings for having sex. The men were sentenced on May 17 in a Sharia court in Indonesia's semi-autonomous Aceh province. CBS News says prosecutors asked for 80 lashes each, but a judge sentenced them to 85 each. The men were arrested in March after a group broke into their room, filmed them in bed together, and posted it online. Gay sex is not illegal in the rest of Indonesia, but it is in Aceh province, which enforces Islamic Sharia law. People convicted of crimes like adultery, gambling, and alcohol consumption have been punished with public canings before. This is the first time gay sex has been punished with public canings in Aceh province, though. The men will be caned on May 23. For United News International from Metro Manila, I'm Crystal Yap.
Texas's lieutenant governor on Wednesday threatened to push for a special legislative session if state representatives don't pass a measure that would limit bathroom access for trans people before the current session ends on May 29th. The move by Republican Dan Patrick comes as he's trying to gain the upper hand with the House over budget and tax policy positions. The North Carolina law prompted economic boycotts and the loss of sporting events, with critics saying it promoted discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people.
Trading on Brazil's stock market was temporarily halted after stocks plummeted 10%. Stocks tanked immediately on Thursday, May 18th, triggering an automatic end to trading. The value of the real, Brazil's national currency, also fell sharply, reportedly wiping out any gains for the year. Financial markets are reacting to new developments in a corruption investigation known as Car Wash. Brazilian President Michel Temer is denying a report that accused him of encouraging bribes. That report, published in the O Globo newspaper, said Temer had been secretly recorded. Observers say investors are jittery because the car wash scandal could impede pension reforms the president has been trying to push through Brazil's Congress. Temer's approval rating had already plunged into the single digits prior to these accusations. Protesters gathered in Sao Paulo are already calling for his impeachment, and reports indicate more protests are on the way. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
A man drove his car onto a busy pedestrian sidewalk in the heart of Times Square in New York City on Thursday, killing a teenage girl and injuring over 20 people. According to law enforcement officials, the driver, a 26-year-old U.S. Navy veteran named Richard Rojas, told officers he had been hearing voices and expected to die. Police have reported 23 people were hit by the car, including an 18-year-old woman who was pronounced dead at the scene. Mayor Bill de Blasio said there is no indication that this was an act of terrorism. Rojas initially tested negative for alcohol, but further testing is underway to determine if he had taken any drugs.
The threat of conflict in the seas of the Asia-Pacific region appears to be greater than anywhere else in the world. And with various navies bolstering their forces, the maritime defense industry has more money to spend on technology, but it doesn't always come in big packages. Like this mini-submarine speedboat combination designed for special forces.
We've worked with other industry partners in delivering an underwater submersible that can travel on the surface at up to 30 knots to 100 to 150 nautical miles, then submerge with 8 people on board, 2 crew, 6 passengers, and then be delivered to an area and then brought safely back out of that area.
The company has also developed an underwater breathing system that recycles the diver's air. That means no bubbles, better for covert operations. Above the surface, technology has led to less expensive ways to patrol large areas. Better and smaller technology can even be placed on a business jet, like Saab's Swordfish Marine Patrol aircraft. High tech on an even smaller level is also critical for close contact and surveillance. There's still a need, though, to be able to move quickly and in strength of numbers. That comes with a newer class of vessel, the Combat Littoral ship. Water jets instead of propellers and flat-bottom hulls make them much more maneuverable and able to operate close to shore.
This is the U.S. Navy's combat littoral ship USS Coronado. Since entering the territorial waters it was tailor-made for, it's conducted operations in the South China Sea. But the tension over territorial disputes and freedom of navigation between the United States and China, some say, is making the biggest threat in the region even more difficult.
And that's the possibility of conflict on the Korean Peninsula. This added tension has driven defense contractors to turn out new technology as quickly as it can be developed, like an anti-ship missile that can be guided to hit a certain part of a ship.
As he's taking over the control of the missile, which has been launched from the helicopter, and at a certain point in its flight, which remains confidential, the pilot can take over. Now I'd rather steer the missile towards the rudder, or perhaps the ship's bridge, or perhaps the ship's radar.
In the next few years, there will be more sailors and vessels out on the waters of Asia Pacific since the Second World War. Navies will be relying on technology that can keep pace. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera, Singapore.
Greek parliament is voting once more for more austerity. A fourth bailout package is Greek citizens' nightmare. More wage and pension cuts, more layoffs, more taxes, and empty wallets for debt-laden country.
It is a disaster. I have 3 kids. One of them is unemployed. The others have left Greece. My husband and I are unemployed too, but our politicians have pockets full of money.
New austerity attached to the funds release include the 14th cut in pensions since 2010 and the reduction in tax-free allowances on income. Unemployment is running at close to 1 in 4 and there is a 48% jobless rate among the youth.
Whatever is voted for is against Greeks. We suffer, but what can we do?
Our life will become worse. We can't do anything.
The lawmakers vote for measures of 5 billion euros. In an effort to win over wavering lawmakers and to placate the public wary of 7 years of austerity, the government has also prepared legislation that would introduce some so-called countermeasures, including social benefits for the poor.
It is a rainy day here in Athens, but it is also a rainy day inside the Greek parliament, where lawmakers are going to vote for more austerity measures. However, Alexis Tsipras, the Greek Prime Minister, is confident that the results will be positive for Greece on Monday's Eurogroup. He also said that Greece is going to attract a tsunami of investments in the future. Irini Zarkadoula, CGTN, Athens.
The Venezuelan government plans to send additional troops to a border state to pacify violence in the region. On Wednesday, May 17th, the country's defense minister said, quote, "I have ordered the transfer of 2,000 guards and 600 special operations troops. The additional troops will be sent to Táchira State as part of Plan Zamora, an operation that aims to ensure the country's stability. At least 3 people have died in Táchira State since protests turned violent Monday. The region has since seen rioting and looting. The sister of a 15-year-old boy told Reuters, quote, "My mom sent my brother to buy flour, and a little while later we received a call saying he'd been injured by a bullet. He later died of his injuries." The violence has left more than 43 people dead nationwide since widespread demonstrations started when the Supreme Court tried to take over Congress in late March. For United News International, I'm Kate Caldwell.
On Thursday, CNN reports that U.S.-led coalition aircraft bombed pro-Syrian regime forces that were advancing well inside an established deconfliction zone. According to a statement issued by Operation Inherent Resolve, the pro-regime militias posed a threat to U.S. and partner forces at Tamf, a remote base in southern Syria. According to a U.S. official, 2 U.S. aircraft were dispatched as a show of force to get the Syrian vehicles to turn around. The official statement said that the vehicles did not stop despite the show of force and warning shots.
A new ferry that will connect North Korea and Russia has made its inaugural voyage. On May 18th, a ferry called Mongyongbong docked at the Russian port of Vladivostok. It's scheduled to make weekly trips between Vladivostok and the port of Rajin in North Korea. Russia's TASS news agency reports the Mongyongbong can carry some 200 passengers and 1,500 metric tons of cargo. It was built over 45 years ago, but just updated last year. Both cargo and tourists are expected to come mostly from China, being taken to and from Russia via North Korea. The new venture is setting sail at a time of political unrest on the Korean peninsula, as the world community has been condemning North Korea's pursuit of ballistic and nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, Reuters reports that a Russian foreign ministry spokesperson said the new service has nothing to do with political issues, saying she, quote, "didn't see a connection." For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
More than 1,600 people battle a forest fire in North China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. The fire broke out on Wednesday in a forest in Chenbaehu Banner in the city of Hulenbor. According to local fire authorities, around 5,000 hectares were burned through as of Thursday noon. 8 aircraft and 6 armored vehicles were deployed to extinguish the blaze. And more than 1,700 forest police are on standby to join the efforts. No casualties have been reported so far, and the temperatures in Inner Mongolia this spring are higher than average, with dry vegetation increasing the risk of fire.
Planned Parenthood announced that it will close 4 of its 12 clinics in Iowa after Republican Governor Terry Branstad backed a plan blocking public money for planning services to abortion providers. Centers in Burlington, Keokuk, and Sioux City are closing at the end of June after losing $2 million in funds. The clinics collectively served over 14,000 patients in the last 3 years. These closures are the latest result from a continuing effort by the Republican Party and the Trump administration to cut funding from Planned Parenthood. The measure is part of the American Health Care Act, the bill intended to replace Obamacare. According to Danielle Wells, a Planned Parenthood Federation of America official, the devastation in Iowa is a sign of what could be next for the rest of the nation.
Health officials and aid workers are heading to a remote corner of the Democratic Republic of Congo to respond to an outbreak of Ebola virus disease. However, a key question remains: will the government authorize the use of an experimental vaccine? The formula had stunning results in a clinical trial in Guinea in 2015, but has yet to be licensed for broad use. DRC officials are weighing use of the vaccine, while new details emerge about the outbreak, which so far includes 20 suspected cases and 3 deaths. Correcting his earlier statement, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee said Thursday that former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn hasn't responded to a subpoena from the panel in its probe of Russia's meddling in the 2016 presidential election. Republican Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina had said hours earlier Flynn's lawyer informed the panel he would not comply with the subpoena. Nina Ginsburg, a veteran Washington defense attorney, said that without an ironclad immunity deal from the committee, Flynn would be exposed to questioning from investigators about any personal documents he gave up. Providing those records to the committee would provide authorities with a lot more information and a legal basis for questioning him about them, she said.
A top U.S. admiral said the U.S. Navy needs to build more ships and quickly implement new technologies to remain competitive with other nations like China and Russia. Admiral John Richardson, Chief of Naval Operations, told reporters on May 16th that, quote, "we are getting back into an era of maritime competition." He said the U.S. not only needs a bigger fleet, but a different fleet, one that will be able to fight in new ways. Richardson argued that even if President Donald Trump's promise of a 350-ship fleet is fulfilled, the Navy will still need to fundamentally change its fighting strategy and use more unmanned systems and drone vessels to keep pace with adversaries. In order to regain advantages over the rapidly improving Chinese and Russian navies, Richardson said, quote, "we need to act urgently to achieve that greater naval power as quickly as we can." For United News International from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
So, Jessica, Trump's comments came during a joint news conference with Colombia's president.
That's right, Elaine. And U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters on Thursday that appointing a special counsel to investigate possible ties between his 2016 campaign and the Kremlin is dividing the country. The U.S. Department of Justice, of course, appointing former FBI Director Robert Mueller on Wednesday to lead the Trump-Russia probe. The move came after growing calls from lawmakers for an undeniably independent investigation.
Well, I respect the move, but the entire thing has been a witch hunt, and there is no collusion between certainly myself and my campaign, but I can always speak for myself and the Russians. Zero.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the country will not participate in an offensive on Raqqa because the U.S.-led coalition will include Kurdish militia fighters. Turkey considers such fighters terrorists. Raqqa is an ISIS stronghold in Syria. Erdogan made the comments Thursday while addressing Turkish businessmen in Istanbul. He had recently returned to Turkey from a Tuesday visit to the White House. Erdogan said, "I saw that America is very sensitive about the Raqqa operation. We said, we cannot be in an operation where there are terror organizations. Wish you the best." He also warned that Turkey would respond to any threat posed to it.
The United States has reportedly extended sanctions relief for Iran under the nuclear deal made 2 years ago, but it also imposed some new penalties related to Iran's ballistic missile program. Experts say the moves appear aimed at cutting off any impression that Trump might be taking a soft approach to Iran. The U.S. brands Iran a state sponsor of terrorism, saying the country is destabilizing the Middle East.